Hello, golfing fans. Welcome back to the channel. It's Joe here again for the Sports Geek, bringing you my preview and best bets for this week's tournament. Now, next week, we do actually have the third major of the season with the US Open all set to take place at Shinnecock Hills. And that means we've only got one event to get stuck into this week, but it is a good one. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Really do appreciate you joining us here. And it might be worth you liking and subscribing to our channel because over the next week and more, I do have a lot of US Open content coming your way. But before then, hopefully we can land ourselves a winner with the RBC Canadian Open. This is an event I really do enjoy watching, really good venues. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a breakdown to the course. We will then take a look at some attributes from players that I think suit the course, and then we'll have a look at the top Canadian market and then bring you my final squad at the end, which is actually a five-man squad, and probably quite notable to mention that the widespread consensus is that there's a lot of golf tipsters that will put 5, 6, 7, even 8 selections up for an event sometimes, but I don't think that's feasible or the right way to go about things. So I do try and max out at 4, but because we've just got the one event this week, I do have 5 players. And to be fair, these 5 players have been high up on my list for some time for this event. And I want us to be paid out nicely before we head into the US Open. Okay, but the event this week, we have the RBC Canadian Open taking place at TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley on the North Course, which is a relatively new addition to the PGA Tour rota. It did undergo major renovation between 2023 and 2024, specifically with championship golf in mind. And to be fair, they were well rewarded by hosting this event last year, which was won by Ryan Fox with a score of 18 under par. And I doubt they're going to get much lower than that, if at all. It's a really, really tough venue, and that was a proper performance. The course is a par 70 over 7,389 yards of just 2 par 5s. And those 2 par 5s are the first and the last of the 18 holes. So a big bunch of par 3s and par 4s to contend with throughout the card. Looking at the flyover and the way that this course will play out, the first thing that definitely stands out to me is that it's not traditional tree-lined positional venue for a Canadian Open, really. This definitely features much wider corridors off the tee. The fairways are quite wide, doesn't really benefit a fade or a draw, to be honest with you, and not really a course, despite the length of the course overall. Long drivers isn't really something that I'm focusing on here, just because the fairways are so wide as they are. I expect plenty of players to be hitting enough fairways this week. The rough isn't too penalising outside of the fairways either, from what I can see on this golf course. But ideally, fade, draw, doesn't really matter here. Get the ball in play, and that is where the challenge starts at this golf course. It's very much a second shot golf course rather than drive-in accuracy. You do want some length because of just the natural length of the golf course, but it's not something I'm putting any emphasis on this week at all. I want really good ball strikers with the irons, particularly the long irons. So with the fairways being relatively generous, like I said, I'm not interested with players off the tee. What I am trying to find here are players that are really good with the long approach shots, because not only are they going into elevated greens, but they're firm. They're really well guarded by deep bunkers too. So even if your player isn't hitting many greens, you then need a really good scrambler. But ultimately, for the best performance, you need a really good player from the fairway. Now, what I mean by that is plenty of strokes gained on the approach shots. You want a decent proximity to the hole from 175 yards to 225 yards. And the way you get that is simply by finding a good ball striker. Now, as you know, I do tend to put a fair bit of emphasis on whether a fade or draw is suited best, but I don't think there's a huge bias here either way. Like I said, the corridors off the tee are fairly wide. This isn't one where players really need to choose or absolutely need to predominantly hit it left to right, right to left. The best description, I think, for this golf course is it suits high quality ball strikers, because from there, if you control your ball striking well, you also control your trajectory and your distance control. And that is how you're going to hit the greens this week. Hit greens in regulation, you can post the number. If you don't, you really are going to struggle. That said, if I was sort of pushed for a favored shot shape, it's always going to be a fade. simply because the greens are heavily protected by bunkering. A fade is just an easier shot to control. You do less with the golf swing, less maneuvering with your hands. And fade players generally have better results now as well. The strongest takeaway in that department is that a lot of the elite ball strikers now are significantly hitting predominantly fade shots. If you go through most of the top 15 in the world, a lot of them are natural faders of the ball now. So look, this is a really difficult golf course. You want nice consistency. Good ball striking, though, is an absolute must. If you don't strike the ball well, you are not hitting greens around this golf course, and you need to get there if you're going to score well. So this is a really tough track, and we will now move on to the top Canadian player market next. So looking at the Canadian market here for the top player, you've got Nick Taylor at 4-1, Taylor Pendrith at 5-1, which is an awful price. Corey Connors at 11-2, and then Sundarshan Yelamaraju at 6-1. Now, last year, Nick Taylor actually was the lowest Canadian. He shot 13 under here, and next best was Corey Connors at 10 under. But I'm not totally convinced this course really does suit Nick Taylor, even though he played well here last year. So I do feel a little bit inclined to take him on, despite him being sort of like a big tournament player. And obviously coming to his home open, he's going to be well up for this, having won it in 2023. This would be a completely different event for him, venue for him to win it at as well. So he's definitely got a chance, but I think Corey Connors is the one that is potentially a bit more of a well-rounded player. One I definitely can't have is Taylor Pendrith at 5-1. I think that's a dreadful price. He's had one top 25 this year, and that was actually his first start of the season. Since then, consistency for Taylor Pendrith has been a massive issue. And it's strange saying that about a player that has posted a 62 and a 63 this year. But outside that, it's full of 70s. And I'm not quite sure what's happening with his game, but he's certainly not firing this year. And if you're taking 5-1 about him, you have to be balmy. Sundarshan Yelamaraju, suppose he's interested. 6-1 is just too short, though. He is a Corn Ferry Tour winner. He's got a few top 10s already on this. On the PGA Tour this year too, without contending though. He's sort of come from a bit further back and crept into the top 10. So he is going to be a class player, but coming into this, he had a miscut in the PGA Championship, a miscut in the Charles Schwab, and then the more worrying one for me was actually last week at Muirfield. Of course, that you'd imagine, correlates quite well to this golf course. He finished tied 40 and never really got anything going with his irons, with his short game. That would be a big worry here. He's going to have a quick turnaround of form if he's going to place in this event. So two of those out of the top four, Taylor Pendrith I can't have, and Sandarshan Yelamaraju, I think they're incredibly poor prices at 5-1 and 6-1. I do have a long shot that I think is worth taking note of. A player called Joey Savoie. I hadn't really heard of him before. He's a 31-year-old. He's 45-1. You can get 3 places at quarter of the odds. And he's on some really good form on some lesser tours, but they're quality tours. He's been playing on the PGA Tour of America. He had a lot of missed cuts, but in his last 4 events, he actually finished tied 8th in Peru. He then had 2 top 30s, and then last week actually won the Ecuador Open in really, really good style. He's a player that's just coming into form at the right time, and you'll find a lot of the time with players on the Corn Ferry Tour or PGA Tour, when they lose their form, it's only temporary. It will come back. And whilst Joey Savoie seems to be in really good form outside of the PGA Tour, he comes there off the back of a win. I think 45-1 for the top Canadian player at quarter of the odds each way is pretty decent with 3 places available. At the end of the day, you'll get an over 10-1 for the place. So Joey Savoie at 45-1 is worth considering in that market. I do feel, though, if you just want one dart in the top Canadian player, though, you look at Corey Connors this week. This course feels custom built for him, really. He's pretty good off the tee. He's an elite iron player, very long, pretty consistently accurate with his approach shots as well. It all just depends on his putting, but that's been pretty solid this year. So I think the best bet from the top Canadian player market has to be Corey Connors at 11-2, but Joey Savoie at 45-1 is well worth a look for the each way money too. Then we move on to my 5-man squad. Really looking forward to this week. As mentioned, these 5 have been on my radar for this event for some time, and it's really good to see a few of them coming into this event with some good form. Some not so much, though, at the same time. But selection number 1 at 14-1 is going to be Tommy Fleetwood, world number 7. He's an 8-time DP World Tour winner. He's a 1-time winner on the PGA Tour. He's got 6 top 10s this season already, and his game is certainly starting to trend back in the right direction for this event. His last 3 starts coming into this, he was tied 5th in the Truist. He finished 67, 67, 17, 69. He then missed the cut of the PGA Championship, which I don't mind at all because I didn't fancy him at that golf course whatsoever. But the important part was his bounce back factor because last weekend in the Memorial Tournament, tied fourth, 67, 73, 70, and 68. And I think Muirfield is a really good correlating course for TPC Toronto. A lot of these players for a few similar reasons, but again, very much a second shot golf course. This isn't really a place where you want a player to come around and maneuver the ball too much. It's not really required. You just need a consistent, quality approach shot specialist, and that is literally Tommy Fleetwood's bread and butter. Comes into this event scoring really well. He's striking the ball really well. His putting has generally been a little bit up and down, but the last 6 months, 6 to 9 months, he's been much more reliable. You can see the form Tommy Fleetwood's in at the moment. I think this is his time to strike. Striking the ball beautifully. 14 to 1. I find it hard to see where it goes too far wrong for him here. The second selection is 22 to 1 shot. Wyndham Clark, world number 37 and a 4-time PGA Tour champion. Now, he is a player you need to keep in line, not just for now, but for the remainder of the season, and I will explain why. In 2023, he won the Wells Fargo before picking up the US Open, which is obviously his first and only major title to date. The following year, 2024, he won the AT&T at Pebble Beach, posting a 60, which, I mean, you're not going to find many players that are able to post a 60 around Pebble Beach. And then in 2025, last year, he seems to fall off the face of the earth. Everyone was wondering where his game had gone. But I had a look into a few things that Wyndham Clark had been trying to change last year. And on the basis that he's a pure fader, he only hits that left to right shot and quite a banana-shaped version of it too. He was finding himself very one-dimensional until he got to particular courses. Now, what he did last year was try to add a draw into his game, and it's taken him months and months and months to really hone in to get that draw so consistent, because going from hitting a left to right shot, big fade, into hitting a draw as well, they're two very different swings. You've really got to be able to manage that very well. However, this year, his game has improved massively, really improved as the tournaments have gone on. 2 starts back, he actually won the Byron Nelson in really good fashion. He came out the following week and came second in the Memorial by a shot. So he certainly found his game heading towards the US Open. A beautiful iron player, striking the ball really well, finds plenty of fairways for his shot shape too. And the fact he is now being able to move the ball both ways is a major positive. I think Wyndham Clark has just gone up a level again, and we are going to expect big performances, not just this week, but throughout the remainder of the year. Okay, next up, we do have to take a little bit of a leap of faith here because it's Shane Lowry at 30 to 1. We're on number 43, 3-time PGA Tour winner. But this course, like I said, has got a bunch of long, difficult par 4s, really firm greens, and there's a strong emphasis on approach play. And that is your Shane Lowry checklist right there. Season form isn't necessarily quite there this year, but he has been playing at events that aren't necessarily suiting his game too well. There has been a bit of poor form in there as well. However, this, for the first time, he's back at a golf course which really, really suits him. Look, everything's going to probably have to go right for him off the tee, but his approach play is ideal for this course. If you go back and look at some of the courses that he's won at and his better performances, they are long, difficult courses with long par 4s, firm greens, and that is what you get this week. So I think there's a big bounce back factor coming this week from Shane Lowry. Selection number 4. Now this one's interesting. Bang out of form, and it's not been factored into his price either, but Bobby MacIntyre at 28 to 1. World number 17, 2-time PGA Tour player. He has actually won this event when it was at Hamilton back in 2024. Different track completely, but again, quite a similar layout in the sense of what he's going to have to do himself. He's a man for the big events, and if you look at this event like a ball striking contest, which it might well turn out to be, then Bobby MacIntyre has to come into the equation. He hasn't been consistent at courses he doesn't like. He tends to throw his toys out the pram. But ball striking courses with long par 4s are everything that he is about. Similar with Shane Lowry. Now could be the time to catch Bobby MacIntyre. And if he wins this week, you can then forget him again for another 6 months. But he's going to have a really good chance here. But the 28-20, a little bit shy. But again, I fancy him to win, so I don't want to let the price affect me too much. Then finally, Mac Meissner, 27-year-old at 66 to 1. He's made 11 of his 14 cuts this year. Really, really good from tee to green. Probably the standout attribute that I really like about his game. Really good long iron player too. Very good ball striker. His par four scoring is absolutely excellent. Really, really good tee to green performances all year round from Matt Meissner. He tends to do his best work in those areas. And if you probably look at sort of data across loads of different websites, you'll consistently see that he is very much a tee to green player over a short game specialist. Now, you do need to putt well. You do need to putt well to score, of course. But first and foremost, you need to get to these greens and regulations. So what I like about him, plenty long off the tee, comfortable on long courses, doesn't need to rely on scrambling and putting. He's really good from tee to green. He's shown really sort of long periods of time where he's got real high-end good ball strike. And what worries me is he's still relatively inexperienced at this level. That putter can disappear for a few stretches as well. And he hasn't really developed into a consistently elite player on the PGA Tour just yet. But he is overpriced, and for a player that is so good from tee to green, he is definitely on my radar for this week. So the five-man squad, the highlight selection, Tommy Fleetwood and Wyndham Clark. And the other three players, Shane Lowry, Bobby MacIntyre, and Mac Meissner. Hopefully we have a good week. Thank you everyone that's tuned in and watched along up until this point. Best of luck. And like I said, do stay tuned here on the Sports Geek. We've got loads of US content, US Open content coming over the next week. And I want you to join me for the journey. Bye for now and best of luck with your bets.